It's great to be here, especially on President's Day. I'll tell you just a little bit quickly about my background, and then we'll start mostly at the national level. We'll come down to the state, and we'll even get to the local level on issues, and of course we'll have questions afterwards. As he did say, I got my first degree as far as higher education right here in Baton Rouge at the LSU School of Veterinary Medicine. Practiced veterinary medicine for 10 years and then went back to Shreveport at the medical school there and got my MD. In where I work now in the Congress of the United States, sometimes the veterinary degree actually comes in more handy than the medical degree does. I grew up in rural America. I live on the farm that I grew up on in Boy. I can still plan about anything, drive any piece of equipment on the farm, herd any cattle, and break any horse that comes to my way. So I had a very enchanted and wonderful childhood, wonderful parents, and it's just served me so many times in the past as reflecting back on my background. When President Trump was elected last year, being on the GOP side, it certainly gave us a little wind under our sails, so to speak. He had a vision, which was a vision that our leadership with Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy and our great own Steve Scalise have espoused over and over and over. And that's simply higher wages, unemployment, national security, all the things that I think as Americans we embrace and that we actually demand from our national government as to what we do and what they do with the taxes that you and I pay on a yearly basis. You saw where we just passed what I consider a very good tax bill. On the individual side, it certainly reduced the number of categories that we have to pay taxes with. It allowed most of the deductions that we were privileged to have to stay in place. The child tax credit, in my opinion, was one of the more important things that stayed into place. And what it did, it went from $1,000 to $2,000. But in this particular bill, the thing that we did require was, for the first time in history, to have a valid Social Security number. Being a conservative fiscal Republican, that matters, and let me tell you how much it matters. What we're told by the Congressional Budget Office is that one thing, just mandating that Social Security card be present before that child tax credit is given, is going to save 27 to 40 billion dollars. Now think about that. That's just one little aspect of that. So it's important. The salt tax, as you saw, there was some issue with our northern folks up in the northeast part that pay high state and local taxes. In Louisiana, we, in most cases, fall below that 10,000 margin, so we're good there. It allowed us to continue to contribute our 401ks, our retirement accounts. It certainly required or allowed all the deductions on graduate education, adoption tax, all the good things that we as Louisianians embrace and know it's a good thing. So on the personal side, I think it was a phenomenal bill. Even on the corporate side, when we went from 35 to 21%, it made a difference. As you read the papers like I do, you watch the media, companies like Apple, Costco, IBM, they are bringing employees back. They're bringing money back into the country. It's going to make a huge, huge difference. Apple alone is bringing $350 billion back in. So we've allowed business to actually start growing again, money to be repatriated from those offshore accounts, and you see the bonuses that are being given. You see voluntarily wages being increased up to that $15 spot, and you see jobs being grown. Again, right now we have been told, and again, I'm sure depending on the source, it would be different from one to the other, but we've already told that since this tax bill has been passed, over 300,000 people have been promised a job or have been employed in a new capacity. So that's a phenomenal aspect. President Trump, when he came to office, wanted to start deregulation, and I think that's a good thing. Everybody here that owns a business, and so that will be listening that owns a business, know how burdensome regulations are. Trump's tenet was for every one regulation, 2 will be taken away. A good thing, but what has actually happened, for every one that has been enacted, there have been 14 regulations that have been taken away. For Louisiana, that impacts every element that we have. Certainly our oil and gas business, who are struggling daily just to try to make a dollar because they are burdened with so much federal and state regulatory burden. So the regulatory scope, the regulatory arena is going to get better, and I'll talk more about agriculture in just a minute. But for the waters of the United States, for the Clean Power Plan, not only for business, but certainly for agriculture, those regulations were basically just, they would kill that particular farm or that particular ranch. We look toward our budget now that was passed a couple of weeks ago, where it did fund the military for $700 billion for 2018, $716 billion for 2019. And I'll talk more about the military in a minute and how important that money is going to be. It funded our community health centers. As a physician, I can tell you, community health centers are necessary. They're vital for our rural Louisianians. They are the safety net when there is no safety net. So this particular budget bill gave the community health centers $9 billion over 2 years. CHIP, our Children's Health Insurance Program. Again, I'm a physician and I practice in rural America. I see these very underprivileged, these unfortunate, and these very poor children that need health care. I'm a physician. If I have a choice, I want everybody to have some type of health care. And what this budget bill did is funded CHIP through 2027. So we've taken that off the table as a political bargaining chip where it should have never been in the first place. And we've allowed those children to have some security in their health care and where they go from there. The budget did many other things other than that. As you know, as a GOP party, we are in the majority now. There was some non-military or non-defense spending that was enacted in this budget bill, but at least we were able to dictate where that money will be spent. The 4 priorities are going to be our infrastructure that President Trump and we want to start building with, our VA administration, our opioid crisis, and cancer research. Those are the big 4 where we think non-defense money should be prioritized. And I think I agree with all those, especially with our veterans, because as you know, they are the heart and soul of America. In Louisiana, we picked up some money for our disaster relief. We got $15 billion in the total bill for the Corps of Engineers on construction products, places that have been hit with more than 2 floods in a year, which certainly Louisiana qualifies. But we go back to 2014 all the way to 2017. We've got about $700 million for Corps O&M operations and maintenance, about $600 million for the MR&T funding, and the list goes on and on. So again, could we have done better in this budget as far as Louisiana? If I had my choice and had written a bill, you bet we would have. But we came out, I think, as good as we could, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute as to why maybe we didn't get more of the pie than I wish we would have gotten. On the insurance front, on October the 12th of last year, President Trump signed an executive order that allowed us in this room, or just this table here, to form their own co-op and buy insurance through their co-op as a large group, say such as a Google or one of the bigger companies can buy. It also allowed us to buy insurance across state lines. All those help reduce the cost of health care, as we all know, going up over and over again. Rates will come out, unfortunately, I think next month. We will probably see an increase here in Louisiana, which is unfortunate, but you're going to see an increase across the nation. In the tax bill, we did repeal the individual mandate. That alone will save about $300 billion, and I can explain how that happens if you would like. But again, we're marching toward giving the choice back to the patient. On the GOP side, we tried to replace and repeal. We were successful in the House. We came up one vote short in the Senate. But by not doing it that way, we have started to dismantle the Affordable Care Act piece by piece. President Trump has done some, we've done some, and again, I think we're marching in the right direction because the choice is going back to the people that need it, and that's the patients. Patients know what they need. They're very smart, and they know where to go with this. On the agricultural front, we are going to pass a farm bill in the end of this year. 2018 is when it's due. Agriculture, I call it our thin green line. They are our national security because food security is national security now. Some of the classified briefings that I am privy to, some of the open briefings that you can see on C-SPAN, over and over acknowledge how vulnerable our food supply is to very nefarious factions, whether it's a biologic, whether it's a virus, you name it. We are susceptible to some type of food safety attack. Our farmers, they know what to do, they know how to grow a crop, they know how to protect their crop, and again, we cannot give can't give them enough credit for what they do on a daily basis. In this farm bill that we're going to pass, the crops that are doing okay in the 2014 farm bill will stay pretty much like they are. Cotton got left out of the last farm bill. We will bring it back into the 2018 farm bill and allow them to have more parity in crop insurance, those things that again allow them just to survive. One good year of a crop is not nearly enough because one bad year will negate 3 to 4 good years. It's just that hard to make a living being a farmer in these days. We've got an opportunity with Cuba. I've actually been there. They need our rice, they need our soybeans, and they need our corn. They want our beef. President Trump has backed away a little bit from Cuba trade, but he's softening, let me just put it that way, on his idea that there can be no trade with Cuba. I continue to have discussions with the agriculture minister over there. They are very receptive. They know the quality that we bring to them for Louisiana as far as our products. We are 3 days away from the Port of Muriel, whereas where they're getting their rice now from Vietnam and the South America, sometimes that barge trips takes 4 to 6 weeks. So Louisiana is poised more than any other state to deal with Cuba, and we need to be there. I will continue to work on that to make that work. We have got on our side of the aisle a bill that I just dropped. It's called Revitalizing Rural America. And what it will do is take money from what's called the FAST Act, the Fixing American Surface Transportation Act, move that money, which is about $2.1 to $2.2 billion, back to the local level. We take the state government out of it. We allow the local parish jury, police jury, the local parish president, or whoever, the school board, to go directly to the Department of Transportation. They know their projects, they know where the money's needed, and deal directly with that. We'll talk about a little bit more of that later. I do want to hit the military because this is so critical to us waking up every day and being able to do what we do. Right now, we have the smallest military that we've had since, the smallest army we've had since World War II, the smallest Navy we've had since World War I, the smallest Air Force ever. And if we don't fund these young men and women that lay their lives down for us every day, then shame on us. In 2017, we had 80 men and women die in training accidents. We had 21 die in combat-related deaths. So we've got 4 times as many young men and women that have died in a training exercise than died in combat. You've seen the stories of the McCain and the Fitzgerald that basically run into each other in the middle of a big wide ocean. That simply goes back to lack of training, lack of readiness, and that is on us as Congress to make that whole. We have lost about 120,000 troops in the last 8 to 10 years. We've got to rebuild our military, and this is what the budget did. It at least started the rebuilding process. So we've got to continue to give money to where money is needed. We've got about 50% of our airplanes on any given day that cannot fly simply because of maintenance issues. We've got about 30% of our ships that are always in the harbor with getting something done to them. And in history, we've never been in this place before. We have troops in 181 countries right now throughout the globe. North Korea, of course, is the thing that is on everybody's mind, as it should be, but we've got Russia, we've got China, we've got Iran, we've got some very bad players globally that their primary goal is to disrupt us here, do very bad things to this country. We have 28,500 military troops in South Korea, but we have 200,000 Americans that are there too. Once you take Guam, Japan, South Korea, then you're looking at 500,000 Americans. Kim Jong-un is not a crazy guy. He is, he's pretty smart if you look at what he's done. He's looked at things that have happened, like at Gaddafi in Libya, where he got deposed, where he didn't have nuclear weapons. He's looked at regimes that have been toppled, and his response is, I'm going to keep my nuclear weapons. Well, you've seen what President Trump has said, denuclearize the country. And I agree with that totally, because Guam, Japan, South Korea certainly is within range of some of those ICBMs. They being North Korea, we think, have somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 to 60 nuclear weapons. They probably do have an ICBM that can now hit parts of the United States. Those will be taken care of, but again, it's our near neighbors, our near allies that we worry most about. So we've got a lot of globally moving parts. Iran is helping North Korea with its missiles. We've got Russia that is trying to break the embargo and bring some coal and some oil in to North Korea so they can fuel their plants and fuel their businesses. So it's a very dynamic world. We've got China now in Djibouti, Africa, where they have never been before. We've got Russia that can control now the Black Sea, the Aegean Sea, where they have never been before. So just moving from 10 years ago to present day, the world has changed militarily, positionally wise, and now China and Russia are near peers, are on par with us as a military might. A lot going on in the South China Sea, as you read about. We're making inroads in there, but China is taking about 3,000 more acres every month that we allow them to do so. So this is why the military is so important. I want to go back a little bit bring it down to our local level and go back to what the budget did do and didn't do for Louisiana. We did get some core money. We did get some economic development money to the tune of, again, $15 billion for all of the Harvey, all of the Maria, hurricanes, and again, we know that in South and West Louisiana, we had some of those that were declared as federal disaster areas. But let's go back to the 2016 flooding. As we all know how horrific it was, worse in some cases than any hurricane that we've ever seen. Up in North Louisiana and in South Louisiana, we had flooding where we had never had it before. We were able to obtain a promise of $1.3 billion from the federal government to help. The problem with that is that as of today, only about $125 million of that has actually gotten into the hands of Louisianians. So when the other members of Congress, when the other members of Senate see that, well, we gave Louisiana $1.3 billion, but guess what? They're only using 125. Where's the rest of it? Some black hole somewhere in the state government here. Why would they give us more money if we're not getting it to the people that are having to dip into their 401ks, that are having to basically bankrupt themselves just to put a roof over their head? To me, it's unconscionable, it's certainly immoral that when this money is sitting somewhere, that we're not getting it to where it needs to go. We all know in Livingston Parish, we can go down most any neighborhood, there's still vacant houses. Up in my neck of the woods in North Louisiana, when we had the flooding in the April flood that just devastated thousands and thousands of lives and homes, I've still got personal friends that are not back in their house. They may have applied for an SBA loan, they didn't get it. They may have applied for a community block grant from the state, they didn't get any money. So they've got children, they've got families, they've got to move on. And we've got to get over, on the federal and the state level, all this bureaucracy of just, again, putting the money somewhere in an account that nobody can get to. So, for me, it's a pet peeve because, and it should be for you, simply because you know somebody that it touched, and you still know somebody that's not back to where they were before the hurricanes, before the 2016 floods, and we need to do something better. So I'll stop there, I'll take some questions, and then we'll talk more. Yes, sir.
All right, I want to dip in a little bit with state politics. I know there's talk of you possibly running against Governor Edwards in 2019. Firstly, would you like to make that official at any point? And secondly, what's currently lacking at the state capitol?
The question was, am I considering running for governor, and what's lacking in the state capitol? We are looking at the race. There are still a lot of things that need to fall into place before we make that final decision. As far as what's lacking in the state capitol, for me, it just boils down to something very simple. I mean, I understand the countless bureaucracies. I understand the frustration. We see it on the federal and the state level. I understand the inefficiency of government. I refer back to the money that's not getting to the folks that had flooding. But the thing that I hear more and more than anything else is just the lack of trust. And for me, being a very simple country boy, that boils down to most everything that's important. When somebody tells you something, they should do something. And when they tell you something and they do something different, I have a problem with that. So again, for me personally, it just goes back to a trust issue. Yes, sir.
Following up on this question, can you cite us some examples of telling one thing, excuse me, and then doing another?
You bet. The question was, can I give you examples of telling one thing and doing another? Taxes for sure, the sales tax, any tax you want to admit. I'm tired of Louisiana having been so rich in treasure, natural resources, being evidently almost $1 billion in the hole, being the 51st state that someone wants to live in out of 50. I hadn't figured that out yet, but some way I guess Washington, D.C. gets put in that mix. So don't tell me you're not going to raise taxes and then raise taxes. Don't tell me you're going to fix my road and don't fix my road. Don't tell me you're going to put money in the highway trust fund where I almost have to get new shocks every time I drive down a Louisiana road. And I drive a Hummer. It's an old Hummer, but it's got good shocks. So it's that type of thing I just see over and over again. And I'm just tired of it. Yes, sir.
Abraham, it's been 30 years since a candidate in North Louisiana that became close buddy Roman won back in the 80s. What makes you think that the state's ready for a North Louisiana candidate?
So the question was, as a person from north of the I-10, North Louisiana, is it viable for someone like me or anybody in that neck of the woods to run for governor? And we understand the dynamics and the logistics of the population. We know where most of the people live. But I go back to the people of Louisiana. I'm all over the state for a variety of reasons on the congressional level. I'm all over the state. Again, you heard I still fly for the Civil Air Patrol and the Coast Guard, so we have many missions down on the coastal area. And when I talk to Rotaries, the small groups at lunch, I hear the same thing, is that we don't care anymore where a candidate is from, as long as they just tell us the truth, as long as they're honest with us. So, is it a hill too far or a hill too high to climb? I don't think so. And whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, I don't think it matters near like it used to as to where he or she is from as far as geography. I think it's more important where he or she is as far as heart. Louisianians understand sincerity. They know when somebody's blowing smoke, and they know when they're being told the truth. And for a candidate just to stand up and speak to any Louisianan, whether from the south, the central, or the north part of the state, I don't think it matters anymore. They're just looking for that person that they can trust.
Congressman, what is your opinion of the job the governor has done in 2 years, or is the trust that you're talking about, does that apply to him, or has he broken
So the question was, what do I think of the John Bell's job in the last 2 years? Was that the question?
That's the question.
Yeah, not too much actually. Again, I just see some promises that are broke, and I'm tired of it. Louisiana deserves better. We should demand better, and until we get better, we're going to continue to be last in healthcare, which I'm well versed in. We're going to continue to be last in education. I have 6 educators in my family, so I know how hard it is to go into a public school setting and try to educate these wonderful children. So we know the legacy lawsuits that are decimating our oil and gas industry, where big companies like the Exxons, like the Conocos, instead of putting the drill bit down in our waters off the coast, they'll move 3 miles over to Texas. They're going to hit the same oil, they're going to hit the same gas, but guess what? They don't have all the lawsuits and the trial attorneys hovering over them, waiting for them to do just one misstep. We all understand safety on the job. We should demand safety on the job. But come on, we live and breathe in Louisiana by our oil and gas. We should be the nation's leader in these categories, and we're falling way behind, not because we can't do the job, it's simply because we're not allowed to do the job.
Congressman, is there something specific that the governor has, when you said broken promises? What is
Taxes, easy.
You're of the opinion that he said that he would not raise taxes and now he wants to raise taxes?
He said he would not raise them like he has raised them. That's the issue. We are the highest tax state in the nation. That's just wrong. We should not. Again, with the natural resources we have and the ability to make money like Louisiana has, taxes will never get you out of a deficit. That goes back to Reaganomics. The thing that we have to do is cut some of this waste, fraud, and abuse. And I understand those are cliches and those are catchwords, but when it boils down to it, that is the reality of it. Yes, sir.
Are you suggesting that Louisiana has the highest taxes in the nation?
I'm suggesting we're one of them, yes indeed.
Factcheck.org and others would dispute that.
You would look at the sales tax.
You also said 14 regulations removed for one.
That's right.
Again, independent organizations say that is also not.
Not in my arena. Way up in the federal level, we see that all the time. And I'll be happy to debate the figures with you.
Bobby Jindal was 8 years as governor. We've had another governor for a short time. Did he have a issue with honesty or relationship with the public?
I wasn't in the public light back in then as far as, Governor Jindal's trustworthiness. You would have to ask him.
So you think it's just this governor?
No, I mean, it could be just this governor, but it could be other people too. I'm talking about this particular administration.
Okay, to fix the roads, et cetera, you would raise gasoline taxes?
No.
Personal income taxes?
I wouldn't raise any taxes.
You wouldn't raise any taxes?
No,
but
I'm
you'd
not.
add-
I'm not going to raise taxes to fix a problem where we already have money allocated for. We have such a huge, what I call the black universe in our general fund. None of that money is designated. Let's go back to the casinos when we brought the casinos in. We said that money would go to education. Guess what? It didn't. Our teachers are suffering. They're some of the lowest paid in the nation. Let's dedicate some money to where it needs to go.
Congressman, a question.
Yes, sir.
What about tax exemptions for corporations?
Look, I love tax exemptions if it will bring business back into the area. Again, you give me a business that will come in, hire, let's make it easy, 500 employees, pay them not a minimum wage, but a living wage. They will be taxed on that income, and I will just about guarantee that at the ledger at the bottom of the page, you're going to bring in so much more money than you would have if that business would have never come and you didn't give those tax exemptions.
Congressman,
Yes.
right now you're one of 435.
Yes, sir.
And maybe some of that might be one-on-one. We really want to listen to you. But in reality, you've not had the chance to, as an elected official, deal with a lot of issues. But I'd like to know what is your real position on stuff like, for instance, the taxpayer protection pledge, global law principles. Have you done that kind of stuff? On climate change, whether you view that as a hoax. And on, for instance, the NRA, whether it's just going to oppose anything at all to do with regulation in the way of firearms. We need to know those things.
All right, let's take them one at a time. Let's take the NRA. I'm a member. I don't believe in regulating the business any more than it has. I understand the horrific and terrible tragedies that not only happened last week, but has historically happened over the course of this nation. But again, going to the tragedy in Parkland, Florida, how many clues were missed by not only federal and state agencies? How many mental health issues were addressed? My concern, once any government gets involved, and I don't care whether it's the state or the federal, once we start meddling in a person's private business, it's a very slippery slope that we never end. And again, this is where I think we fail as a nation. We see something, but we don't say something. We are so afraid of being pulled into a court case. We are so afraid of having our personal ability with social media attacked. So, it's a problem. You want to talk climate change? Give me objective data. I do know that, the oceans are rising less. We've never lost one species to climate change or what they used to call global warming. I am all for environmental sound policies that lower the greenhouse effect. But as a physician and studying some sciences, I do know that CO2 is a natural product of the environment. We've got Antarctica that has actually grown about 100 million tons of ice in the last 7 or 8 years. So I know what they're saying on the other side of the spectrum, but show me objective data and then we'll have that debate. As far as your fiscal responsibilities with the Northwest and all that, I am probably the most fiscally conservative person in this room. I will hold a dollar tighter than anybody else. And, I want that money to go back to those people that actually earned it. I've always said, it's easy to make money, it's hard to keep money. And that's very true, because it's easy to make it, but if somebody wants to take it away from you, and I think we should all be very tired of that. Yes, sir.
So while we're on the subject of back into taxes here, legislators at 4 p.m. are set to clock in for their, losing count here, I believe their 5th special session over the past 2 years since Governor Edwards took office. $1 billion at stake, more or less. And do you think the solution there is at least some replacement revenue, all cuts? Where do you think legislators should go from here?
The question was, what's the solution to the current budget crisis and, our taxes? The answer, no. I'm just opposed to tax. Show me some good budget, fiscal responsibility, then I'll sit down at a table and talk to you. I'm tired of just throwing the checkbook out the window and not balancing the books. We've got to be smarter than that. We are smarter than that.
Again, just to clarify, $1 billion in cuts.
If that's what it took to balance the budget, you bet. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Governor Edwards has also gone to the wall even so much as to the Louisiana Supreme Court to defend the right of transgendered folk to use whichever bathroom in a public facility they would like. What's your stand on that? How well do you think that'll play out in North Louisiana? And do you believe it is in fact an infringement upon the naturally born gender that a person has for a transgender person to be able to choose whichever restroom they'd like, and he's taking it all the way to the Louisiana Supreme Court?
As a physician that has delivered many, many babies, I can assure you gender is determined at birth, biologically. And I understand if somebody feels a different way, that's their business. It's not my business to get into their bedroom. It's not my business to get into their mind and determine and tell them how they should feel. It is my business as a public employee to protect the general population. And I do have a very big problem with a man, I don't care how he feels that day, if he feels feminine when he wakes up, using a bathroom of my granddaughter or a female. That should answer that question.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman.
Yes, ma'am.
Following the floods, there seemed to be a discontent, and continues to be a discontent, mainly with FEMA. There was some resolution about people who, would apply for loans, wouldn't get them, and still they weren't qualifying. Are you satisfied with the way it turned out, or is there more that needs to be done at the national level with FEMA?
And the question was, am I satisfied with FEMA as a national bureaucracy? Absolutely not. FEMA needs to have major reconstruction surgery also. It comes down to federal, state. I want a mile out of it. Give that money to the locals. You give that to the police jury, the parish presidents, you give it to the local school boards. They know, they live in the community. So yeah, we've got to have the bureaucracy to start the money process out. But after that, it should be a straight line to the local government. Take as much federal government out of it as you can. Take as much state government. I don't care if I'm governor or not, I'll tell you the same thing. The locals know their business.
Well, in that same vein of thought, the locals don't have responsibility taxing, nor we're at the state level paying
Well, that's a problem.
Supplemental pay for local people. There's that whole shift in Louisiana, we talked about every good government group for years, that we do things differently because locals don't tax at their level and they're happy with it like that.
Well,
So what would you do?
some may be
differently?
happy, but the people that I talk to aren't very happy with it. And again, if we can give some of the power of the purse back to the locals, to me, that's the smartest idea in the room. So, again, I don't like any bureaucracy. I can tell you, being on the federal level, there is so much waste. I could give you example after example. There is certainly abuse, and we need to restructure the way we even think about that large pot of money.
So you would say then, the same thing would be true, the responsibility goes back.
Oh,
to
you
the
bet. Look,
local.
if you're gonna take the goods, then you take the responsibility. You bet. And I don't think there would be any local government that would shy away from that, as long as we could protect them from the liability aspect, and that goes back to our legal climate. It's horrific in
One
Louisiana.
of the reasons I'm pushing on this is the 5th Congressional District, if you drive through your district.
It's pretty tough.
It's very poor.
It's very
And
poor.
one of the thoughts is the rest of the state needs to help maybe some communities in that part.
And I would disagree with that. What I can tell you is that you give that money to my people that I know in my district, they would embrace the money, they would take the responsibility, and they would fix the problem. I don't think there's anybody in this state, I don't think there's many people in the nation that want to be dependent on any other group. Americans as a whole, and especially, I go back to my great farmers, they are the most optimistic people in the world. I mean, good God, that's like going to Vegas every day, but they wake up with a smile on their face. They're ready to attack the problems of the day. People in Louisiana, they're not Republican, they're not Democrat, they're pragmatists. They see a problem and they want to solve it. Again, I think on the national level, we could have more of that. We need more Louisiana thinking on the national level. Yes, sir.
You alluded briefly to the president's concerns about trade with Cuba, but the TPP was, according to Dr. Strain, was a blow to Louisiana's farmers already. What reason do you believe that things are going to get more, or what reason for optimism is there that NAFTA would even continue?
Well, NAFTA will continue. I do believe that simply because of some conversations I've had with the administration. The TPP, in President Trump's view, and certainly in some of our view, was very much tilted toward our trading partners on that Pacific Rim. You have seen since that has been put on the back burner that there have been trade deals with Japan, trade deals with South Korea, and again, the way the president, I can't speak for him, but I've watched him long enough, the way he looks at a problem is as in pragmatism also. He just sees it and he solves it. And with our trade inequity, we need to have more parity, and he is marching in that direction, and I'll march with him. As far as NAFTA, I think NAFTA is just fine. Somebody in the back, yes, sir.
As a fiscal conservative, how do you feel about the effects that this tax bill and all these changes will have on the deficit?
I'm worried about it. Again, we are living in a $20 trillion plus debt. If this tax bill goes south, or this budget, which I don't think it will by any means, then you're looking at a potential of $1 trillion deficit. Now, let me tell you how that can be fixed, and I think we're on the right path to that, is that for every, and again, you can fact check this, but I think I'm right, for every tenth of an increase, 1/10 of 1% in our GDP, that adds $200 billion back to the economy. We are having record growth in our economy. In the last administration, we were about 1.8. So far in the Trump administration, we're going to bump 3.3. We're told, and again, this is right now just talk, this is chit chat, that in 2019, we may hit 4%. Now, if we consistently stay above a 3% growth in this country, the deficit and the debt will start certainly to decrease very rapidly. So, our tax bill, this budget, it is riding on the shoulders of the economy. And that's why I think the tax bill is so phenomenal, is because of what you've seen so far with these big global companies coming back into the country. I think you're going to see more and more of that. Yes, ma'am.
So I understand your position on taxes, but I guess then I go to the reverse part of it, which is, what do you think the state is doing currently that it shouldn't be spending money on? Like, do you have a list of ideas of where the state spends money inappropriately or spends more than they can afford?
So the question is, where is the state right now spending money in the wrong arena? Education, healthcare, surface transportation, coastal restoration, all those, because I know where we need to go. I know where the money is going. All those are vital for Louisiana. But let's pay our teachers more, let's give them more choice in the classroom, let's put money back to coastal restoration and coastal resiliency so that when we do have the next hurricane, we are more prepared. Again, our roads are a mess. I don't care what part of the state you're in. We've got to plus them up. It goes back to the fiscal responsibility of the budget. Don't raise the taxes. Let's rededicate this money to where we know the problems are.
And I understand that position. I'm trying to figure out if you think that we don't need, as a state, to renew any of that money, then where do you suggest we are spending money inappropriately that would cut that $1 billion so that we can balance the budget?
Let's go to healthcare first. Again, as a physician, I want everyone to have healthcare. But what I can tell you, I see Medicaid patients in my clinic, or the clinic I work in whenever I do work there, the 2 or 3 times a month. I have a Medicaid patient that says they either need a colonoscopy, a heart cath, an ENT referral, you name the specialist. I can't get them there. So what happens? We have to put them in the hospital just to get the heart cath or get the colonoscopy. So what should be a $600 or $700 procedure now turns into a $3,000 or $4,000 procedure because you've got that hospital bill on top of it. So if you want to know where to save money, give me some money for Medicaid and I will show you how to use it smartly. I will save money, but more importantly, I will give that hard-working patient that has Medicaid a better healthcare system where they have access to the primary care, they have access to the specialist, and they have access to the drugs that they need. Case in point, and I won't belabor this too long, as a physician, if I have a patient that has diabetes, just for example, I can't give them the best drug because it's not on the formulary and they can't afford it. So their sugar is not nearly as controlled as it should be. So guess what happens? They end up in the ER over and over where their sugar is way too high or way too low, or they end up with renal failure where we have to all of a sudden spend for dialysis, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, or we have to send them to a retinal specialist because now they're going blind. I get very, in fact, I get angry about this, is how much of an imbalance, a disparity we have for those that have good, wonderful work insurance and our wonderful patients that are just trying to live from paycheck to paycheck that are on Medicaid. We are doing them a disservice. We are telling them they have insurance. Let me tell you, as a physician, I can tell you they don't have insurance. They have a piece of paper and they may have a card that pays for me as a doctor. A lot of even primary cares won't take them because the reimbursement is so low. But when we jeopardize their lives because we are to the point where we're not willing to save the money that they need to get to where they need to go, get the test, then we need to look at that. So I can tell you, I can save literally hundreds of millions of dollars on a healthcare system that works for everyone.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.